Hello, welcome to another episode of the Black Phoenix podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alger Parrott, and today we are interviewing both the director and assistant director of child nutrition for Spring ISD. So, hello, if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Shelly Copeland, director of the child nutrition department.
And hello, I'm Kevin Truong. I'm the assistant director for child nutrition.
So, both of you guys, can you explain what you guys do in your career?
Oh, how long do we have? No. So as director, we're responsible for the complete department and the operation of the National School Meal Programs, which includes the breakfast program, lunch program, after school snack program, supper program, and also summer feeding. And so we oversee those operations. We have about 430 employees in our department, and we feed about 18,000 kids for breakfast and about 26,000 kids for lunch. Yes. Kevin, what do you want to add to that?
We manage all schools, so all 43 campuses that we have in Spring ISD, from pre-K all the way up to high school.
All right. And what does a typical day for you guys look like?
Okay, so in the morning, it's making sure all of our schools are covered with staff, meaning if we have more absences at one campus, we move staff around so that we can even out the staffing so that we don't have a shortage causing a problem with being able to serve kids. We're also looking at making sure we have our food items in place, taking care of ordering the foods for the meals, and then just a general running the office, which includes payroll, free and reduced programs. It includes catering, as well as working on concessions this time of year. So we might be dabbling in all of it or a little bit of it. It just depends on the day.
Same thing for you, Mr. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, my phone starts ringing about 4:30, 5 o'clock saying, hey, we don't have this manager here today. Can someone go open up the school? So that way we can get staffing. So high school breakfast starts at 6:30, ends about 7 o'clock. So, by the time y'all are getting on the bus, our staff is already at school making getting breakfast prepared. And just making sure the day-to-day operations go smoothly so y'all don't know what's going on or behind the scenes.
What's your guys' goal as child nutrition?
So first and foremost, we do have to comply with the federal regulations for the school meals.
Yeah.
So our goal is to do that, but also to have variety and to have foods kids actually like and would eat. Because, you hear all the time it's not nutritious if you don't eat it, and that's true. We want things that kids like to eat. And so taste tests help with that, which we just completed a round of taste test in October. And so that's kind of the main thing for us, just making sure we are meeting those guidelines and then doing so with foods that kids like.
I think our overall goal is to feed every kid that we can, every student that we can. We know that there are certain things that kids don't like, but because of certain regulations and policies that's given by USDA, we have to follow certain guidelines. So there's some things on the menus that we know kids may not like, but we do have to menu those options. I would say my first thought is sweet potato fries. We know if we serve regular fries or curly fries every day, students would actually pick up more of it. But because we do need red, orange vegetables on the menu, then sweet potato fries kind of covers that. Or would y'all rather have yams, or something like that? So sweet potato fries gets menued quite often, and it's not a student favorite, but it's something that meets the categories that we need.
By the way, we took a survey asking if students knew the foods in a balanced diet, and only about 80% of them were able to correctly identify the food groups. Why do you guys think that there is such a large margin of that?
I think that's very interesting, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that nutrition education is covered in PE or in
I believe
maybe
health.
athletics,
I believe
maybe
health class.
health class. I think part of it has to do with interest, and I think also part of it has to do with, the way menus are set up today. You have sides, and take for instance, macaroni and cheese. There are people that actually believe it's a vegetable, and we hear that especially at the elementary level, not so much at the high school level, but I think just paying attention to nutrition education is part of it. Anything else you would want to
I
add?
think it just depends on a certain age group and who's interested. It tends to be athletes and the students that are burning more calories, that are more concerned with nutritional values. But most students, all of us, we're used to following trends. Trends don't really follow nutritional values or whatnot. If we opened up a Starbucks in the cafeteria, I guarantee everybody's going to Starbucks and no one's counting calories and whatnot. So I think it's just depending on, like Shelly said, what everybody's interest in it is. Yes, there might be a small population that wants tofu or something on the menu, but majority wouldn't.
Right.
So I think it just depends on trends and trying to make those trends follow our nutritional guidelines that we have to follow too.
All right, so for after this, we're going to swap hosts, so someone else. And now, a brief intermission to talk about one of the greatest resources we have at Carl Wunschie Senior High School. Here at Wunschie, we have an amazing culinary program with students who are passionate about being in the culinary field. They work hard to get you amazing food every day. At the Log On Cafe, there are homemade cookies, coffee, sandwiches, and baked goods. Come stop by the Log On Cafe during any lunch and grab yourself a snack. Let's get back to our interview, shall we?
I'll introduce myself. My name is Kylie Khalil. I'm the co-president of the Black Phoenix Podcast Club.
Okay.
I deal mostly with writing the questions, taking the surveys, writing all the scripts that we use, and doing the planning. My co-president, Anderson, he does most of the tech and production, editing, and posting aspect. So I wanted to start off with, how did you become interested in child nutrition as a career?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So in high school, let me start there. I took cosmetology, which was a great new program we had back in my day. And so as I did work as a hairdresser for 10 years outside of high school. After about 7, I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I did go back to school to get an instructor license to teach cosmetology. And in the process of that, I took a nutrition class. And I had a great professor. She said, hey, you kind of have a knack for this. Recommended me for the program at University of Texas in the medical center here in Houston.
Awesome.
So I was accepted to that program. And when I did my rotations, I did a rotation in school nutrition at Barbara Jordan High School in HISD and loved it. And so kind of from that point, I knew I wanted to be a dietitian in a school district because, reaching kids with nutrition, for me, was a lot more fun than counseling a patient in a hospital. So that's the kind of the direction I went. And I've been in school nutrition since 1994.
Wow, so you have a lot of
Long
experience.
time.
Yeah. I think it's great that we have someone who's firstly passionate and secondly experienced, because that really helps the students connect with you, because we know that you truly want to improve our school system. So we appreciate you for doing all the work that y'all do.
Thank you.
So our second question, I think y'all kind of covered this, but just to get a little bit more detail, who decides and governs the child nutrition meals and meal plans for every week or month?
Okay, so in our department, we have 3 dietitians, myself, we have a menu coordinator, and we also have a dietitian who works to do special diets. So our menu coordinator is the one who basically sets the menu, but she does get feedback from Kevin, myself, and our other dietitian. We talked about the taste test, and then also just feedback from other directors or dietitians that they work with in our area. we receive USDA commodity foods, and she determines what we're going to do with that food. So take chicken. We get USDA chicken. We send about 2 or 3 truckloads of chicken to Tyson. You've heard of Tyson. Tyson then takes that chicken and they make it into the chicken tenders, the chicken patties, the chicken breasts for like the Chick-fil-A type sandwiches that we use. They also make it into like a grilled chicken. So she decides those kind of things and then bases our menu on what we're able to send our USDA foods to these processors to make chicken products out of it. We also do that with beef, with cheese that goes on pizza. We do it with potatoes for mashed potatoes. So just a lot of, there's a lot that goes into menu planning, but it is done by our coordinator.
Amazing, yeah. And I didn't know all that. I didn't know so much went into it. I thought it was just take the chicken, bake it, all that.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting to hear that so much work goes into it.
It is.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, obviously COVID-19 has affected a lot of things as far as supply. I work at an ice cream shop. I know we've had a very hard time getting supplies and especially food products. So how has COVID-19 affected how schools supply and make food?
Okay. So it has hugely affected us, just like you said, it's affecting you and your work outside of school. We place orders with our main food vendor, which is Gordon Food Service, on a weekly basis. Most of our schools get 1 delivery a week and others get 2 deliveries a week. Those orders, we place them, say on Thursday, and then by Friday they tell us what we're out of. And our list has typically been anywhere from 15 to 25 items that they're either out of totally, or they have something, hey, we have this similar product you could substitute. So on a weekly basis, we're going through a long list of items where they either totally don't have it, we can't get a substitute, or we're having to approve substitutions, which is really hard because we're trying to find something that's as good of quality and also not double the price. And pricing has been a big thing. We're really getting a lot of price increases right now as well. So on a weekly basis, we're dealing with what they may or may not have on hand so that we can feed you guys. So, yeah.
Wow, 15 to 20 items seems like a significant amount.
It is, yeah, it is.
Do you know what the average before COVID was about? Like how many items they say they were out of, or were they not out of anything?
I would say maybe 5.
Oh wow!
Right,
so,
maybe.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is a huge difference.
Yeah.
All right. So our last 2 questions are kind of more fun questions. Our question was, have you ever tried any of the school food, like in the tastings? What would you say is your favorite meal?
Oh, so for breakfast, my favorite thing is the pancake sausage on a stick.
Yes, those are good.
And I really like those, I guess because I feel like it's just kind of a great meal wrapped up in one, and it's very flavorful. For lunch, I believe my favorite lunch is going to be something like nachos or tacos, things like that. I do like the enchiladas. I feel like we have a really great enchilada sauce this year, which, by the way, we do have a new chef who helped us develop that recipe.
It's amazing.
And and so those are probably my favorite things, the nachos or maybe enchiladas, something like that. So yes, and we do eat school lunch on occasion. We get out there and
Yeah, I personally, I really like the pancakes wrapped in that one's really good.
Yeah.
So my last question for you was, here at One Sheet we have a career pathways, and one of our pathways is culinary. And we personally have a log-on cafe that sells different items sort of based off the request of students. So we sell sandwiches, salads, wraps, and drinks. But unfortunately, some students rather, do rely on school food, but they would rather eat the cafe food. Is there any reasonable way that we can give funding to not only the food but the students so they can learn, and also lower the prices for students who maybe don't eat the school food and would rather eat the log-on cafe food?
So you mean the prices of the cafe food?
Yes, ma'am.
And so we don't really have control over what they do in the cafe, other than if anything they're selling to students has to still meet the child nutrition regulations. So if they sold you coffees or any types of flavored drinks and things, they have to meet the guidelines for beverages for school meals. And then anything entree or any side dish that they serve or sell, it also has to meet our guidelines if they do it during the day, during the school day. The thing about school meals is they're free for everyone this year. And hopefully it will stay that way for us because we participate in the community eligibility program. But I would say, one thing I think I might have missed part of the question because I do believe you asked if we could provide funding
Yes, ma'am.
for the cafe, and we can't do that with federal funds, which is unfortunate. But what we can do is if there's any particular menu item that they have in the cafe, if you have an interest in that, you could share that with us and we could see if we could make something that we could actually put on the line
Yes, ma'am.
in the school nutrition program.
Yeah.
And then, it's just some menu ideas because we're always looking for menu ideas and things that kids want to try. And which is part of the reason we do the taste test. But unfortunately we can't, we really are separate from the school cafe because we are a federal program.
Yes, ma'am.
And we receive federal funding from the USDA for the meals that we serve.
Awesome.
So-
All right. Thank you very much.
You're
I just
welcome.
had one more short question.
Okay.
So a lot of the kids in culinary are aspiring to be either chefs for children or a position like you and yourself. Do you have any advice that you could give them as far as schooling or just career advice in general?
Well, I think one of the great places to start, and I would say this is, I believe, the area that Kevin might have started in is restaurant management, hotel and restaurant management. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's a great place to start, and U of H has a great program. Just looking at what kind of options are available when you get into a food service administration type position, which is awesome. You don't have to be a dietitian to be a child nutrition director, but it is something that does help when you're looking for a job. They may be looking for specifically a dietitian in a specific school district. So I think that is, beneficial, but not absolutely necessary. So hotel, restaurant management, and food service administration would be great.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. I think
You're
we're going to move on to Mr. Kevin. So we're going to start off with the same question we start off for Ms. Copeland. How did you become interested in your child nutrition career?
I was not interested in child nutrition to begin
Alright.
with. I went to college, didn't know what to major in, and then took a couple of classes and then added up all the classes. I'm like, what can I graduate with that took the least amount of time? Of course, I took a lot of science classes and then everything, and pharmacy I wasn't really interested, but then nutrition called out. And I was like, I like food, let's go there.
All right.
So I started with that, and then next thing you know, I'm about to graduate and had no idea what I was going to do with that.
Awesome.
I applied for a job with a management company that contracted with different entities to provide food service for everybody. So they did stadiums, they did businesses, corporations, they did school districts. One of the jobs I applied for was with a school district, and they contracted with them, and then that was 2009, and I've been in school nutrition ever since.
Wow. So you'll have a lot of experience, especially with education. That's amazing. So our next question was another question that we asked Miss Shelly, and it's, have you tried school food, and what was your favorite?
I do try school food. I try to at least eat it every time I go out to the schools, even when I go to multiple schools in a day, just because to make sure, to do quality control tests to make sure that school is cooking it the same way that school is cooking it. But I would say my favorite is always pizza. You can't go wrong with pizza.
No, you can't.
And then our Alpha pizza that we're using, it's an amazing pizza. I can't tell it's a school pizza, and sometimes you can tell the difference between school food and not school food or whatnot, with the whole grain, whole wheats and whatnot. But the pizza we use, I can't really tell that, and that's what I really like about it.
All right. And it's very reassuring to know, because I think there's a little bit of a divide between the students and the administration, because we don't give y'all advice, and sometimes they don't feel like you ask for advice. But I feel like if we found a middle ground. We could, communicate with each other and better the child nutrition, especially with y'all's help and all of your education experience.
And that's the hard part. When I first started in child nutrition or school nutrition, I was closer to your age or just seniors and whatnot. But as I got older, my taste changed. And then I remember we tested something that I really liked. And then when we tested, the students didn't like it. And I was like, that's odd. I don't know why. And it's because, well, my taste kind of matured a bit. And then I noticed once I figured that piece out, I'm like, okay, now we got to make sure we do test out with students because my taste is a lot different than everybody else's now.
Yeah, and I know even myself, I have different tastes than all my friends. Like, I'll eat something and be like, this is great, and they'll be like, I don't like it as much. So that's very interesting to hear. I had another question. It was actually a question, some of these were submitted by students, but this was very popular. And it was, we noticed that we had the spices rack in our lunch lines, and we wanted to know why it was removed. A lot of kids enjoyed that, enjoyed having it in the school system.
Why it was removed? That's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, well, we had it out right pre-COVID, and then COVID happened, and then with many students having access to touch those racks and those spices and those things, we haven't come up with a clear solution for students to use that without cross-contaminating, I guess, the entire area and spreading the germs. So those spices and seasonings they don't really come in packets. So IW packets they do like ketchup and mayonnaise and whatnot too. So we don't have a solution to, I guess, deliver those spices in a prepackaged form so students can have access to it now. But that's good to know that the students remember that and are missing it.
Yeah. Even at middle school, I remember having him be like, oh, this is great. I feel like a little chef. And especially, I know we definitely understand with the pandemic, it's hard to get the things that we had. And we actually have a few students in the engineering program and construction program that I know personally would love to help y'all. I know it's sometimes different point of views can be helpful. And lastly, we had a question about recycling food. So we have an environmental club here at Wunchie, and we personally noticed that there was a lot of waste with food, especially uneaten food. So the apples I noticed weren't being eaten, or the small cups of cucumbers. And we wanted to know if it's allowed, I guess, to reuse that into our compost and our greenhouse that we have.
I think it depends. It's something that we've always been interested in. With fruits and vegetables, part of USDA's requirement is a student take a fruit or vegetable when they go through our lines as one of the components. So that's why students do have to take either a fruit or vegetable with every meal. But as far as composting, we haven't been brought that opportunity before. I know there's been several other nonprofits outside of the school district asking if we could, but for us it was more of a food safety concern, not knowing how they were going to keep those foods in temperature and transport those and pick those up and whatnot. So as far as in district, no one has come to us with those suggestions, which we would be very interested in doing, because like you said, there is some waste out in the school district or out in the schools and the cafeterias and whatnot. To repurpose it, not for other people, but for compost, for gardens and whatnot. I think that's something that we could truly work on.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all meeting with us. We had some great questions and answers, so yeah, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say before we log off?
I don't think so.
Yeah?
No, I appreciate y'all having us for the first
We're very
podcast.
excited.
Yes.
And if anybody has any input, we're always willing to listen. We always want what's best for our students, for our kids, and if that means if we can put something on the menu that they're willing to eat, why not?
That's
All
right.
right.
And you have our emails.
Yes,
Email us
ma'am.
anytime.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
All right.